So the situation is kind of like this, right? Let's say you're out somewhere and you run into someone that you kind of know, right? Maybe it's a friend from school, or it's someone you used to party with, or a friend of a friend. And then now you saw them, and you have to talk to them, and you have to like make conversation, right? So that's the situation. So I drew a little graph here, and this graph represents the relationship between how old you're getting and how much fun it is to run into someone that you kind of know. And I think early on, when you're younger, it's really fun to run into someone that you kind of know. And then at some point, I would say arbitrary at 29, it just goes really, really unfun. And then after a little bit, it becomes slightly more fun again, and it starts to go up as you get older. All right, so this is my relationship, fun and age. X is going to be the age axis, Y is the fun axis. Okay, so here's my deep dive. All right, so in your 20s, I feel like it's the first time in your life where you actually have the chance to not see someone for a while, right? Because not seeing someone for a while is like 4 or 5 years. That's like a quarter of your life, right? And it's really exciting, right? It's like you go out, you're with some friends, you see someone you know, and you know that group of people as well. You look cool in front of your friends. It's really exciting. You want to talk about stuff, right? It's a good time. So I think the conversations that happen when you're in your 20s is something like this. It's like you tell people how you're doing. It's, oh, like, what are you doing now? Oh, this is where I went to college. Like, this is what I'm doing after college. Like, this is where I work now. You talk about people you know. Hey, remember this guy? Like, how's he doing? Oh, I still hang out with this guy over here. Like, he's doing great, blah, blah, blah. And everyone's kind of still relatively close knit. You kind of have no idea. You kind of know what everyone's up to. And then what probably happens is you go, hey, we should get lunch or something, right? You're still in the city. Oh, let's get lunch. Oh, where do you work? Oh, I work by there, blah, blah, blah. And you make plans, right? And that's generally what happens when you're in your 20s. And then over time, I feel like reality starts to set in, and then you start to realize, like, hey, every time I meet someone like this, it's the same fucking conversation every single time, right? It can only go one way. It's like, hey, how's it going? I've been good. How are you? I've been good. What do you do? I do this. I do that. I live here. I live here. And that's basically it, right? And I feel like also at this age, you kind of have this weird thing going on where because you went to school together, it's like you're kind of judging them on what they're doing. At the same time, you're trying to kind of flex on them as well on what you're doing, right? And you're kind of hoping they don't judge you. And you're just like, it's like a weird situation that's going on. And the conversation is pretty boring, obviously. And you start to realize, like, why are we making plans to hang out just because we saw each other? Like there's a reason we don't hang out. It's not because we don't like each other. It's just like logistics or whatever. It's just difficult to hang out, right? And it's also kind of awkward because it's like if you're out there and I'm out here, I'm with a couple of friends, you're out there with your couple of friends. Like, do I introduce myself to your friends, or do I have to introduce my friends to you? And like, how long do we talk for? How, like, it's just weird, right? Or if it's like I have my girlfriend here, do I introduce my girlfriend to you? It's just like a lot to think about, right? So I think that's why at the age of 29 or your late 20s, basically what happens is you start seeing people you kind of know, and then you start ignoring them. You just pretend you didn't see them, right? I remember one time I went home and I was at a boba shop in my hometown where I grew up. I see this kid I used to hang out with, like in high school, and then I see him. I'm like, oh fuck, I don't want to talk to him right now because I'm with people, he's with people. I just don't want to have a conversation with him. And then so I don't look in his direction. And then while I'm standing in line, I accidentally look in his direction, and then he looks at me at the exact same time. We make eye contact for like a split second, and then we both look away. And then that was the last time I ever saw that guy. So that's kind of what happened. I think we were both trying to avoid a conversation so bad that we just haven't talked since. And I feel like at this age is also kind of weird too, because like you still kind of care what people think, and like you still kind of care, like you want them to know you're doing well and stuff. And yeah, and so like there's a little bit of that as well. And when you do talk to someone, you have to navigate that hurdle. And then I think at this stage you kind of realize, oh, like let's not make plans because like we're not going to pretend like we're going to try to hang out. So I think that's the conversation you have in your late 20s. And then when you get to your 30s, I feel like it comes full circle. So like you obviously don't get back. You saw my graph earlier. You don't get back to where you were at before. You don't get nearly back, but it does start being nice again to hang out with people that you kind of know, right? Because you don't really have friends anymore. And if it's like if you meet someone that lives in your city that you already kind of have history with, it's just like way easier. So you might actually ask them to hang out, and you might actually hang out because you have no friends, right? And that happened to me recently. I went to like this grocery store, and I was like, grocery store, I saw this guy I used to live with in college. Probably haven't seen him in like 10 years. And I was like, hey, how's it going? I talked to him for like 4 or 5 minutes. And I was like, yo, can you come to, I talked to him for like 2 or 3 minutes. I was like, hey, can you come to my birthday party? And then he's like, yes. And then afterwards I hit him up. I sent him an invite to my birthday party. He says he's going to come. And I'm like, oh, cool. Now I have another friend that I didn't have before. So yeah, so it was cool. And then I think at this age, you don't really ask questions where it comes off as you can judge someone. I think people are just better at that. I don't know how to explain it, but people are just better at it. And I feel like I don't know if you remember, or I grew up in SF, and at the time when I grew up in SF, I grew up my 20s in SF, and at the time there was this thing where people go like, "What do you do?" Right, and people hated that, and I kind of felt the same way. But I feel like in your 30s, you don't really ask that anymore, or it's more like casual, or when people ask, they actually care about what you do to kind of figure out like what your interests are, or what you're into, not so much as like, hey, how much money you make or whatever. I don't know how to explain it, but it's just a little bit different when you're older. It's just not, it's nicer, right? But yeah, I talked to him for like a couple minutes. We caught up real quick, and then yeah, now we're gonna hang out again. So I think people are better at keeping it short and sweet, and then there isn't that weird feeling. Also, I kind of knew him better, but there isn't that weird feeling that you get what I was mentioning earlier. So that's basically it. Oh, okay. And then here I forgot. Okay, so I feel like I should set some best practices into running people that you know. All right, so here are my best practices. Number one, I feel like you have to be sincere, right? I actually don't like it when you meet someone and you see someone again, they're like, the reaction's like hella big because it's like, yo, like just chill out, like just be normal, and then so yeah, be really sincere, and don't pretend like you don't want to meet them either, obviously. Uh, and I feel like the conversation should be on like what's happening right now, right? So if I ran into you at the gym, then we talk about gym stuff. If I ran into you at the grocery store, we talk about grocery store stuff, or whatever, right? Just talk to someone talk about something that's current, like you would if you met a friend, right? I wouldn't recommend making plans that you don't plan on keeping because it's completely pointless, and I hate doing that. So just if you want to make plans, great. If you don't make plans. And then I think best practice is don't hella interrogate people. Don't ask them hella questions about what they're doing just because you're trying to figure it out. At the same time, don't hella talk about yourself and what you're doing as well because honestly, they probably don't care. And then just kind of save the deeper conversations for later on. If you are gonna actually hang out, like just save that for that. But if you're just running each other really briefly, like just keep it short and sweet because it's just easier that way, especially when you're with people. I'm not sure what best practice is if you are with someone and they're with someone. Like, do you introduce them? I would say maybe, but maybe how you would introduce them is you would introduce the person to who you're with and explain how you know him, right? Instead of explaining it the other way around. But then if you're the person getting introduced to, like let's say I'm the person I'm getting introduced, I wouldn't go and shake everyone's hand because it just takes too long. I think you just do like one of those high waves to everybody, and then we'll keep it at that, right? That way, there's like a group of like 4 or 5 people. Like you don't have to do the whole handshake thing. I want to really stop doing that. So that's my PSA. Like just high wave to everybody. Oh, cool, how's it going? Because no one honestly really cares.